Several factors are important when considering if an electrical job was overbid. The cost of electrical materials has risen significantly recently due to supply chain issues and inflation. It's important to factor in the actual cost of materials when estimating a job. Labor costs vary depending on the location and the experience of the electrician. You should estimate the number of hours required to complete the job and multiply it by the hourly rate. Permits, inspections, and other administrative expenses can add to the total cost of the job. It's important to include these costs in your estimate. Contractors typically add a profit margin to their estimates to cover overhead costs and make a profit. The profit margin can vary depending on the size and complexity of the job. It's helpful to get multiple bids for a job to compare prices. However, it's important to look beyond the price and consider the experience, reputation, and quality of work of the contractors. Also, consider if all the necessary materials and labor were included in the estimate. Account for any potential setbacks or complications. Provide a detailed scope of work to the homeowner. Without knowing the specific details of the job and the materials and labor costs involved, it is difficult to say definitively whether an overbid occurred. It's possible that another contractor was able to offer a lower price due to lower material and labor costs, a smaller profit margin, or a less detailed scope of work. It's also possible that the other contractor made an error in their estimate. To improve competitiveness in the future, consider the following tips. Firstly, get accurate material costs from suppliers. Secondly, research labor rates and adjust your hourly rate accordingly. Thirdly, include all necessary costs in your estimate. Fourthly, provide a clear and detailed scope of work to homeowners. And fifthly, be prepared to negotiate and adjust your price based on market conditions. In the specific example provided, an add-on addition with all new wire, 2 bedrooms consisting of 14 outlets, 4 circuits, specifically 2 lighting circuits, and 2 receptacle circuits, installing 2 ceiling fans provided by the homeowner, both controlled by 1 single pole switch, 1 20-amp laundry circuit, 1 15-amp circuit for lighting, specifically 1 fluorescent fixture controlled by 2 3-way switches, 1 20-amp bathroom circuit, 1 exhaust fan controlled by 1 single pole switch, 1 ground fault interrupter receptacle, 1 vanity light provided by homeowner controlled by 1 single pole switch, 1 hallway receptacle, 1 ceiling light controlled by 2 3-way switches using circuit feeding laundry room light, and 1 15-amp circuit for 4 regular smoke detectors and 1 smoke carbon dioxide detector. Requires careful calculation of materials and labor. Let's break down potential cost factors. For materials, consider the cost of the wire needed for all those circuits. 14 outlets require boxes, receptacles, and wiring. 4 circuits for the bedrooms mean 4 breakers in the panel, plus the wiring back to the panel. Don't forget wire connectors, staples, and other miscellaneous hardware. The 2 ceiling fans require fan-rated boxes and hardware for mounting. The single-pole switches are relatively inexpensive, but their cost adds up. The 20-amp laundry circuit requires 12/2 wire and a 20-amp breaker. The 15-amp lighting circuit needs 14/2 wire and a 15-amp breaker. The 3-way switches for the fluorescent light will cost more than the single-pole switches. The 20-amp bathroom circuit also requires 12/2 wire and a 20-amp breaker. The exhaust fan needs wiring and a mounting box. The ground fault interrupter receptacle is more expensive than a standard receptacle. The vanity light wiring and connections need to be accounted for. The hallway receptacle adds to the total receptacle count. The smoke detector circuit requires 14/3 wire if interconnected, and the smoke and carbon dioxide detector will be another added cost. Labor costs will depend on how long it takes to run all the wiring, install the outlets and switches, mount the fans and lights, and make the connections in the panel. Consider the time spent traveling to the job site, setting up, and cleaning up. Also, factor in time for any unexpected problems or delays. Permit costs vary depending on the location. Inspection fees are also a factor. Profit margin is typically a percentage of the total cost of the job. A reasonable profit margin is usually between 10 and 20%. Comparing the estimate to other bids requires understanding what the other contractors included in their bids. Did they use the same quality of materials? Did they include all the necessary labor? Did they factor in all the permit and inspection fees? Were they cutting corners to get the job? Additional considerations include potential setbacks or complications such as unexpected wiring problems or difficult access to the work area. Also, consider the scope of work. Was it clearly defined, and did the homeowner understand what was included in the estimate? To get accurate material costs, contact local electrical suppliers and get quotes for all the materials needed for the job. Research labor rates by contacting other electricians in the area or checking online resources. Include all necessary costs in the estimate, such as permit fees, inspection fees, and travel time. Provide a clear and detailed scope of work to the homeowner so they know exactly what is included in the estimate. Be prepared to negotiate and adjust the price based on market conditions. If other contractors are bidding lower, consider reducing the profit margin or finding ways to save on materials or labor costs. Remember, it's important to provide a fair and accurate estimate that covers all the costs and allows for a reasonable profit. Underbidding can lead to financial problems and a rushed job, while overbidding can lead to losing the job. Another critical aspect is adherence to the National Electrical Code. For example, receptacle spacing in bedrooms is governed by NEC 210.52 A1, which states that receptacles shall be installed so that no point along the floor line in any wall space is more than 6 feet or 1.83 meters, measured horizontally from an outlet in that space. This ensures that extension cords are not used excessively. The 220 amp small appliance branch circuits required in the kitchen and dining areas are covered in NEC 210.11 C1 and 210.52 B. These circuits must serve receptacle outlets only and must not serve lighting outlets or other appliances. Prime fault circuit interrupter protection is required for bathroom receptacles per NEC 210.8 A1. This protects against electrical shock in wet locations. Arc fault circuit interrupter protection is required for bedroom circuits per NEC 210.12 B. This protects against electrical fires caused by arcing faults in wiring. Smoke detectors must be installed in each sleeping room and outside each separate sleeping area per NEC 760.41 P. This provides early warning of a fire. The minimum size of conductors for branch circuits is covered in NEC 310.15 B16. For example, 14 American wire gauge copper wire is typically used for 15 amp circuits, 12 American wire gauge copper wire is used for 20 amp circuits, and 10 American wire gauge copper wire is used for 30 amp circuits. The ampacity of conductors must be properly derated for ambient temperature, and the number of conductors in a raceway per NEC 310.15 C. This ensures that conductors do not overheat. Proper grounding and bonding are essential for electrical safety. NEC 250 provides detailed requirements for grounding and bonding electrical systems. The height of receptacle outlets is not specifically mandated by the NEC, but common practice is to install them 12 to 18 inches above the floor. Switch height is also not specifically mandated, but a common practice is to install them 44 to 48 inches above the floor. The number of outlets on a circuit is limited by the NEC. A general rule of thumb is to allow 180 volt amps per outlet for general purpose receptacles. For lighting circuits, the load should not exceed 80% of the circuit's rating. When estimating a job, it's important to consider all of these factors and to comply with all applicable codes and regulations. Failure to do so can result in safety hazards and legal liabilities. Consider also the cost of fuel, vehicle maintenance, and insurance. These overhead costs can add up significantly over time. Marketing and advertising costs should also be factored into the estimate. Getting the word out about the business can be expensive. Continuing education and training are important for staying up to date on the latest codes and technologies. These costs should also be considered. Finally, don't forget about taxes. Sales tax, income tax, and self-employment tax can all take a bite out of the profits. In summary, Accurately estimating electrical jobs requires careful consideration of all the factors involved, from materials and labor to overhead and taxes. By taking the time to do the job right, an electrician can ensure that they are providing a fair price to their customers and making a reasonable profit for their business. For the specific case in New Jersey, labor rates are typically higher than in other parts of the country. Material costs may also be higher due to the cost of transportation and storage. Permit and inspection fees may also be higher in some areas. Therefore, it's important to research local conditions and adjust the estimate accordingly. When dealing with homeowners, communication is key. Explain the scope of work in detail and answer any questions they may have. Provide a written estimate that clearly outlines the costs involved. Be professional and courteous at all times. By building a good relationship with customers, an electrician can increase their chances of getting the job and earning repeat business. Remember that the lowest bid is not always the best bid. Homeowners should consider the experience, reputation, and quality of work of the contractors they are considering. A contractor who cuts corners to save money may end up costing the homeowner more in the long run. It's important to choose a contractor who is licensed, insured, and bonded. This provides protection in case of accidents or poor workmanship. Check references and read online reviews before hiring a contractor. This can help get an idea of their reputation and quality of work. Ask for a written warranty on the work performed. This provides assurance that the contractor will stand behind their work. Finally, trust gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right, it's best to move on to another contractor. Estimating is not an exact science. There is always some degree of uncertainty involved. However, by following these tips, an electrician can improve accuracy and competitiveness. The goal is to provide a fair price that covers all the costs and allows for a reasonable profit. This is the key to running a successful electrical business.